The Nebraska winter of 1888 hit different on the open prairie. John Hanson learned that when his children spent their first night in the new sleeping room, he had built exactly the way every homesteader in central Nebraska was told to build it: above ground frame walls, basic insulation, wood stove in the adjacent dugout, standard and trusted. By February, they were shivering under blankets at 2 in the morning while he burned through 3 cords of wood, and come summer, that same room turned into an oven that hit 85 degrees by afternoon. Across the Great Plains, settlers were losing sleep and burning through their winter fuel in rooms built by the book and failing by the season. The county agent laughed when Hanson announced his plan to bury a sleeping room 7 feet underground, calling it foolish over-engineering. Over the next year, Hanson quietly applied techniques borrowed from his immigrant father and local indigenous knowledge to create a sleeping space that held steady at 60 degrees year-round without any heating. What did he understand about the earth beneath the prairie that every serious homesteader today should know? The standard method that every county agent and homesteading manual recommended seemed logical enough on paper. Frame or sod walls above ground, basic chinking between logs or sod blocks, a wood stove placed in the main living space, with heat expected to radiate into adjacent sleeping areas. Hanson had followed the prescribed approach precisely, consulting the Territorial Building Guide and copying the cabin designs of 3 successful neighbors. The sleeping room measured 12 feet by 10 feet with 7-foot ceilings, positioned adjacent to the main dugout where the family cooked and gathered. The walls used standard sod block construction with minimal timber framing, and a single small window faced south for light. By December, the problems became undeniable. Hanson recorded interior temperatures with a mercury thermometer borrowed from the town doctor. On nights when outside air dropped to minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit, the sleeping room never rose above 42 degrees despite the wood stove burning constantly in the main space. His 3 children, ages 6, 9, and 12, woke with frost on their blankets. The family water bucket froze solid 18 inches from the interior wall. Worse, the wind-driven cold seemed to bypass every layer of insulation. Hanson could feel drafts flowing across the floor even when he packed additional straw around the base of the walls. Summer brought the opposite extreme. The same sleeping room that barely held heat in winter became a furnace when prairie sun hit the western wall from noon until sunset. Hanson measured interior temperatures exceeding 90 degrees Fahrenheit on July afternoons, when outside air reached 98 degrees. The children complained of headaches and restless sleep. Their straw mattresses grew damp with perspiration, and the room held stifling heat well past midnight. Hanson possessed knowledge that most Nebraska homesteaders lacked. His father, Klaus Hanson, had emigrated from the German-Russian colonies near Saratov in 1876, bringing memories of Zemlyanka structures, partially buried dwellings that German settlers had adapted from Russian peasant techniques. Klaus often described the root cellars and storage rooms his family had excavated 8 to 10 feet underground, noting how they maintained steady temperatures regardless of surface weather. "The earth does not lie," Klaus would say in his mixed German English. "Below the frost line, always the same." Additionally, Hanson had developed informal relationships with members of the local Lakota band who occasionally camped near the settlement during seasonal migrations. An elder named White Buffalo had shown Hanson the remains of winter lodges built partially into hillsides, with careful attention to wind direction and earth berming. White Buffalo explained through hand signs and broken English that earth holds the warmth wind cannot steal. These conversations occurred during trading sessions when Hanson exchanged carpenter work for winter meat. Hanson's professional skills as a carpenter and his farming experience gave him practical knowledge of excavation, timber framing, and site drainage. He had dug wells for neighbors and understood soil composition, water table levels, and seasonal ground movement. Unlike most homesteaders who arrived with farming backgrounds but limited construction experience, Hanson could visualize complex building projects and execute them with precise measurements. The social resistance began immediately when Hanson mentioned his underground sleeping room concept to neighbors during a barn raising in early spring. County Agent Samuel Burr, a man who took pride in his official knowledge of proper homesteading techniques, dismissed the idea as foreign nonsense. Burr argued that underground rooms would flood, collapse, or create dangerous air conditions. "You're planning to bury your children alive," he told Hansen in front of 6 other families. "Stick to proven methods." Neighbor Tom Evans warned that digging deep rooms would waste precious time and energy that should be spent on crop production. Others suggested that Hansen was showing off, trying to build something fancier than necessary. The lumber supplier in the nearby town of Fairmont worried aloud that underground building would reduce his sales if the idea caught on. Hansen quietly developed his hypothesis through careful observation and reasoning. He noticed that his root cellar, dug only 4 feet deep, maintained temperatures between 50 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. Food stored there never froze in winter or spoiled from heat in summer. If a shallow cellar showed such thermal stability, a deeper excavation should provide even better temperature control. The key insight came from combining his father's Zemlyanka knowledge with White Buffalo's Earth Lodge principles. Both traditions understood that stable ground temperature existed below the frost line, approximately 6 to 8 feet deep in central Nebraska. At that depth, the Earth maintained a nearly constant temperature equal to the annual average of surface air temperatures, roughly 55 degrees Fahrenheit in their region. Hansen began excavation in late spring of 1889 when ground conditions were optimal. He chose a location 15 feet east of his main dugout, positioning the entrance to face southeast for morning warmth while avoiding the prevailing northwest winter winds. The site sat on a gentle slope that would provide natural drainage while allowing earth berming on 3 sides. Digging progressed slowly through prairie sod and clay subsoil. Hansen worked methodically, creating precise measurements: 7 feet deep, 12 feet long, 10 feet wide. He shored the walls with salvaged timber as he excavated, knowing that soil pressure required immediate support. At 6 feet depth, he noticed the earth temperature remained cool and constant even during hot surface weather. This confirmed his theoretical understanding. The excavated soil created a substantial pile that Hansen planned to use for berming around the completed structure. He also discovered a seam of limestone fragments at 7 feet depth, which he saved for wall construction, another technique learned from his mason father. By midsummer, Hansen had completed the excavation and begun laying foundation stones. The project attracted curious visitors, some supportive, but others openly skeptical about the wisdom of such elaborate construction for a simple sleeping room. Hansen's choice of site location required understanding wind patterns that most homesteaders ignored. Prairie winds followed predictable seasonal directions. Winter storms arrived from the northwest, carrying temperatures as low as minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit, while summer heat waves pushed up from the southwest. Hansen studied these patterns by observing snowdrift formations around existing buildings and noting which walls accumulated the heaviest frost buildup during cold snaps. The conventional approach placed sleeping rooms wherever convenient, typically on the south side of cabins to capture maximum daylight through windows. This orientation created a fatal flaw. Walls faced directly into the path of winter wind-driven cold while also receiving the full blast of afternoon summer sun from the west. Hansen had measured surface temperatures on his neighbor Tom Evans's south-facing bedroom wall during a July heat wave, recording readings of 112 degrees Fahrenheit on the exterior siding at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Hansen positioned his underground chamber to face southeast rather than due south. This alignment captured gentle morning sunlight for natural warmth during winter days while avoiding the intense late-afternoon solar bombardment that turned conventional rooms into ovens. The southeast orientation also placed the entrance at an angle to prevailing northwest winter winds, reducing the direct pressure that drove cold air through gaps and cracks in above-ground structures. The slope Hansen selected provided natural advantages beyond simple drainage. The site descended gradually from west to east at approximately a 3-degree grade, allowing him to excavate the sleeping room into the hillside rather than digging straight down from flat ground. This technique, which White Buffalo had demonstrated using stick diagrams drawn in prairie dirt, meant that earth would naturally bank against 3 walls of the completed structure. Creating effective earth berming required specific material composition and precise placement. Hansen could not simply pile excavated dirt around the walls and expect thermal stability. Prairie soil contained high clay content that expanded when wet and contracted during drought, creating gaps that allowed air infiltration. Instead, he mixed the clay soil with prairie grass sod cut into 18-inch squares, creating a composite material that maintained density while allowing minimal settling. The berming extended 4 feet up the walls on the northwest and south sides, with the earth sloping gradually away from the structure to ensure water drainage. Hansen packed this material in 8-inch layers, watering each layer lightly and tamping it with a wooden mallet to eliminate air pockets. The final berm measured 6 feet thick at the base, tapering to 2 feet thick at the top edge. Hans Zimmermann, the German-Russian mason who had helped neighbors build stone foundations, provided crucial guidance on thermal mass principles that Hansen's father had only partially understood. Zimmermann explained that effective earth berming required specific density measurements to function properly. "Too loose, the cold finds holes," he told Hansen in his accented English. "Too tight, the water has no escape and freezes, cracks, everything." Zimmermann demonstrated proper berming technique, using a method from his homeland where winter temperatures regularly dropped below -20 degrees Fahrenheit. He showed Hansen how to test soil density by driving a wooden stake into the freshly placed earth. If the stake penetrated more than 6 inches with moderate hammer blows, the berming needed additional compaction. If the stake barely penetrated 2 inches, the soil was too dense and required loosening with additional organic material. The integration between the underground sleeping chamber and Hansen's existing dugout presented engineering challenges that required innovative solutions. The two structures needed to connect through an insulated passageway that maintained the temperature advantages of both spaces while providing convenient family access. Hansen constructed a tunnel 4 feet high and 3 feet wide, lined with split logs and insulated with a combination of prairie grass and clay mortar. This connecting passage included a heavy wooden door at each end to control air movement between the spaces. During winter, the family could close off the sleeping chamber entirely, allowing it to maintain its stable earth-moderated temperature without influence from the warmer main dugout, where cooking and daily activities raised interior temperatures. In summer, opening both doors created controlled air circulation that prevented moisture buildup while preserving the cooling effect of the underground location. Hansen completed the berming work by late August of 1889, just before the first frost warnings. The structure presented an unusual appearance that drew continued skepticism from neighbors. From ground level, only the southeast-facing entrance and a small section of roof were visible. The remainder disappeared into what appeared to be a natural hillside covered with native prairie grass that Hansen had transplanted onto the berm's surface. The first test came during an early September cold snap, when overnight temperatures dropped to 38 degrees Fahrenheit while daytime highs barely reached 55 degrees. Hansen measured interior temperatures in the new sleeping chamber using the mercury thermometer, recording consistent readings between 56 and 58 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the 3-day cold period. His children slept comfortably under light blankets, while neighbors' families added extra quilts and fired their stoves earlier than usual. More impressive results emerged during the first extended heat wave in early October, when daytime temperatures soared to 94 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 consecutive days. The underground sleeping chamber peaked at 62 degrees Fahrenheit during the hottest afternoon, while remaining at 59 degrees during the coolest pre-dawn hours. This represented a temperature swing of only 3 degrees compared to the 30-degree daily swings recorded in above-ground bedrooms throughout the settlement. County Agent Burr visited the site in late October, bringing 2 other territorial officials who had heard reports about Hansen's unusual construction. They spent an hour examining the berming technique and questioning Hansen about structural stability and potential flooding risks. Despite their obvious interest in the temperature performance, all 3 men maintained that such elaborate construction remained impractical for typical homesteading families who needed to focus on crop production rather than experimental building projects. The earth berming solved temperature stability, but Hansen quickly discovered that underground spaces created dangerous air quality problems that conventional above-ground rooms never faced. During the first weeks of occupancy in November, his family complained of stuffiness and headaches after sleeping in the chamber. The problem intensified when Hansen sealed the connecting passage doors to conserve heat during a particularly cold stretch. Carbon dioxide accumulated from human respiration while oxygen levels dropped, creating conditions that left the children drowsy and irritable each morning. Standard homesteading ventilation relied on natural air leakage through gaps in above-ground construction combined with occasional window opening. Underground chambers eliminated these accidental air exchanges, requiring deliberate ventilation systems that most prairie settlers had never encountered. Hansen recognized that he needed controlled fresh air circulation that would not compromise the thermal advantages he had achieved through earth berming. White Buffalo provided the solution during a December visit when he sketched diagrams in the dirt floor of Hansen's main dugout. The Lakota elder explained through gestures and broken English how traditional earth lodges used buried air tubes to bring fresh air into underground spaces. "Air sleeps in ground, wakes up warm," White Buffalo said, demonstrating with his hands how cold surface air traveled through underground passages before entering living spaces. The earth tube concept required precise engineering that combined indigenous knowledge with Hansen's carpenter skills. He needed to create a passive system that would draw fresh air from outside, moderate its temperature through ground contact, and deliver it to the sleeping chamber without creating drafts or heat loss. The tube also had to prevent moisture condensation that could block airflow or create structural problems. Hansen began construction in January of 1890, digging a trench from a point 60 feet northeast of the sleeping chamber entrance toward the interior space. The trench measured 18 inches wide and descended to 6 feet below surface level, following the same depth that had proven effective for thermal stability. At this depth, the surrounding earth would warm incoming air to approximately 53 degrees Fahrenheit even when surface temperatures dropped below zero. The tube itself required materials that would maintain structural integrity while allowing efficient heat transfer between air and surrounding soil. Hansen constructed the passage using split oak logs arranged in a rectangular cross-section measuring 6 inches high by 8 inches wide. This dimension provided adequate airflow volume while maintaining structural strength under soil pressure. He sealed the joints between logs using a mixture of clay and prairie grass, creating an airtight conduit that prevented soil infiltration. Critical to the system's function was the inlet configuration that prevented snow blockage while maintaining proper air pressure differential. Hansen built a stone-lined surface opening positioned 18 inches above ground level and angled to face away from prevailing winter winds. The opening featured a wooden baffle system that blocked direct wind entry while allowing steady air intake driven by natural convection as warmer air rose from the sleeping chamber. The interior end of the tube entered the sleeping chamber through the east wall at floor level, where cooler incoming air would naturally settle before warming and rising. Hansen installed a simple wooden damper that could partially restrict airflow during extreme weather while preventing complete closure that would recreate the dangerous air quality conditions. Thermal mass construction represented the second major innovation Hansen incorporated during winter months when outdoor work became impossible. Hans Zimmermann had repeatedly emphasized that underground spaces required massive walls to store and slowly release heat, preventing the rapid temperature swings that plagued conventional frame construction. "Thick stone holds the warmth all night, gives it back slow and steady," Zimmermann explained during a February visit. Hansen collected limestone fragments from his excavation work plus additional stones from a creek bed 2 miles distant, hauling them during January thaws when the ground permitted wagon travel. The limestone provided ideal thermal mass properties, dense enough to store significant heat, while porous enough to allow moisture movement that prevented wall damage from freeze-thaw cycles. Wall construction proceeded methodically through late winter and early spring. Hansen laid stones in courses 18 inches thick, using clay mortar mixed with chopped prairie grass for binding. The walls rose 7 feet to support the roof structure while providing maximum thermal mass exposure to interior air. Each wall contained approximately 4 tons of stone, creating enormous heat storage capacity that would moderate temperature fluctuations throughout daily and seasonal cycles. The interior wall finish incorporated techniques that Zimmermann had learned from European plastering traditions adapted to prairie materials. Hansen applied a 2-inch thick coating of gypsum plaster mixed with finely chopped grass fibers, creating a smooth surface that increased thermal mass while improving air quality through moisture regulation. The gypsum naturally absorbed excess humidity during summer months and released it during dry winter periods, maintaining comfortable interior conditions without mechanical systems. Integration between the ventilation system and thermal mass walls required careful attention to airflow patterns within the chamber. Hansen positioned the air tube inlet to direct fresh air along the north wall, where it would contact the coolest stone surface before circulating through the room. This arrangement ensured that incoming air reached comfortable temperatures before reaching the sleeping area, while maximizing heat exchange with the thermal mass. The first comprehensive test occurred during a March cold snap when outside temperatures dropped to -18 degrees Fahrenheit for 4 consecutive nights. Hansen measured inlet air temperature at the tube opening, recording -15 degrees, tube outlet temperature at 51 degrees, and chamber air temperature maintaining 57 degrees throughout the cold period. The stone walls absorbed heat during the warmer daytime hours and released it steadily overnight, preventing the temperature drops that plagued above-ground bedrooms. More dramatic results emerged during variable spring weather, when daily temperature swings exceeded 40 degrees Fahrenheit. On a day when outside air ranged from 32 degrees at dawn to 74 degrees by mid-afternoon, the sleeping chamber varied only from 56 to 59 degrees. The thermal mass walls absorbed excess heat during warm periods and prevented rapid cooling when outside temperatures dropped, creating remarkable stability that conventional construction could not achieve. County Agent Burr returned in April with a territorial inspector who had received reports about Hansen's unconventional building methods. Both men spent considerable time examining the air tube system and questioning Hansen about potential problems with moisture, structural failure, or air quality. Despite recording interior temperatures with their own instruments and acknowledging the system's effectiveness, they maintained that such complex construction remained beyond the capabilities and needs of typical homesteading families. The roof structure above Hansen's underground sleeping chamber presented insulation challenges that conventional above-ground construction never faced. Standard prairie cabin roofs relied on steep-pitched designs that shed snow and rain quickly, using minimal insulation since heat loss through the roof represented only a fraction of total heat loss in drafty frame buildings. Underground structures reverse this equation. With earth-bermed walls providing excellent insulation, the roof became the primary path for heat loss and the critical component determining overall system performance. Hansen's initial roof design followed conventional timber frame methods learned during his carpentry work. He laid oak beams across the 12-foot span, covered them with split oak planking, and added a layer of prairie sod for insulation and waterproofing. This approach worked adequately during mild autumn weather, but serious problems emerged during the first hard freeze in late December when interior temperatures dropped more rapidly than the earth tube and thermal mass walls could compensate. The fundamental issue involved heat stratification within the underground chamber. Warm air naturally rose to the ceiling level where it contacted the underside of the conventional roof structure. Without adequate insulation barriers, this heat conducted through the timber and escaped to the cold surface above. Hansen measured ceiling temperatures of 68 degrees Fahrenheit during January evenings while floor temperatures remained at 55 degrees, indicating that valuable heat was migrating upward and dissipating rather than remaining available for family comfort. Hans Zimmermann diagnosed the problem during a February visit when he examined the roof construction with the critical eye of a craftsman who had built cold climate structures in the German-Russian territories. "Your walls hold heat like a good cellar, but your roof breathes it away like summer shade," he told Hansen. "In the old country, we learned that underground rooms need roofs that work like blankets, not like hats." Zimmerman explained insulation principles that differed fundamentally from standard frontier building practices. Effective underground roof insulation required multiple layers of different materials, each serving specific functions in preventing heat loss while managing moisture and structural loads. Single-layer systems failed because they created thermal bridges where structural elements conducted heat directly through the insulation barrier. The layered insulation system Zimmerman recommended began with a vapor barrier directly above the interior ceiling planks. Hansen created this barrier using rendered pig fat mixed with pine pitch, painting the mixture onto the wood surface to create an airtight seal that prevented warm, moist interior air from penetrating into the insulation layers above. This technique prevented condensation that would reduce insulation effectiveness and cause structural rot. Above the vapor barrier, Zimmerman specified a 6-inch layer of dried prairie grass cut during late summer when seed heads were fully developed. The grass needed specific preparation to function as effective insulation. Hansen spread it on canvas sheets during sunny September days, turning it regularly until moisture content dropped below 15%. Properly dried grass contained trapped air spaces that provided excellent thermal resistance while remaining relatively stable under the weight of additional roof layers. The third layer consisted of packed earth excavated from clay-rich subsoil and mixed with chopped straw in a ratio of 4 parts clay to 1 part straw by volume. This mixture, applied 8 inches thick, served dual functions as additional insulation and structural mass that helped stabilize interior temperatures. The clay-straw combination dried to a dense, crack-resistant surface that distributed the weight of the final roof layers while adding thermal mass similar to the stone walls below. Zimmerman's final innovation involved a surface layer of living sod that provided both weatherproofing and additional insulation through the root mat and organic content. However, this sod required careful selection and installation techniques that differed from conventional prairie sod construction. Hansen cut 18-inch square pieces from native buffalo grass areas where root systems had developed maximum density, ensuring that the organic mat would remain intact and continue growing on the roof surface. Installation of the layered roof system required precise moisture control and timing that tested Hansen's construction skills throughout the spring months. Each layer needed adequate drying time before the next layer was applied, but prolonged exposure to rain could damage partially completed work. Hansen constructed temporary canvas shelters that could be quickly deployed to protect work in progress during the frequent spring thunderstorms. The structural engineering challenges increased significantly with the additional weight of the multi-layer insulation system. Hansen calculated that the completed roof would bear approximately 80 pounds per square foot compared to 20 pounds per square foot for conventional cabin roofing. This load required additional timber reinforcement using techniques that Zimmerman had learned from European heavy construction traditions. Hansen doubled the number of roof joists from 4 to 8, spacing them 18 inches on center instead of the conventional 3-foot spacing. He also added intermediate support posts within the chamber, positioning them to avoid interference with sleeping arrangements while distributing roof loads to the stone walls and earthen floor. The support posts used 8-inch diameter oak logs cut from timber Hansen had salvaged from a neighbor's storm-damaged barn. Completion of the roof insulation occurred during May of 1890, allowing Hansen to test the system's performance during the variable weather of late spring. The results exceeded his expectations. During a 3-day period when outside temperatures ranged from 38 degrees Fahrenheit at night to 76 degrees during afternoon hours, interior chamber temperatures varied only from 57 to 59 degrees. The multi-layer insulation had eliminated the heat stratification problems that plagued the original roof design. More impressive performance emerged during summer heat testing. On a July day when surface temperatures above the roof reached 104 degrees Fahrenheit in direct sunlight, Hansen measured the temperature at the interior ceiling surface at 61 degrees Fahrenheit. The living sod layer had created a microclimate above the insulation that remained cooler than surrounding prairie surfaces, while the layered system below prevented heat penetration into the living space. The integration of roof insulation with the earth tube ventilation system created synergistic effects that enhanced overall performance. Cool air delivered through the underground tube remained at floor level instead of rising immediately toward a warm ceiling, allowing more complete circulation through the chamber before exiting through the natural convection process. This improved air movement helped maintain uniform temperatures throughout the space while ensuring adequate oxygen levels for family. Health. Neighborhood interest in Hansen's construction methods intensified during summer months when the performance advantages became obvious to outside observers. Mary Evans, who lived on the adjacent homestead, began asking detailed questions about construction techniques after visiting during a particularly hot July afternoon. She noted that Hansen's children appeared comfortable and rested each morning while her own family struggled with heat-disrupted sleep in their conventional above-ground bedroom. County officials made their final inspection in August, bringing a territorial engineer who had been dispatched to evaluate reports of unconventional construction methods spreading among homesteaders. The engineer spent 2 days examining each component of Hansen's system, taking detailed measurements and temperature readings. Despite documenting the superior performance, he concluded that the complex construction requirements made the system impractical for widespread adoption among settlers, who lacked specialized knowledge and abundant time for elaborate building projects. Hansen's complete underground system faced its ultimate test during the brutal winter of 1890 to 1891, when central Nebraska experienced the longest cold snap in territorial weather records. From January 15th through February 8th, outside temperatures never rose above -5 degrees Fahrenheit, with nighttime lows reaching -28 degrees. This extended extreme weather provided definitive performance data that conventional above-ground construction could not match. Throughout the 25-day cold period, Hansen maintained detailed fuel consumption records that revealed the economic advantages of his integrated system. His family used 1 3/4 cords of firewood for heating the main dugout and cooking, while the underground sleeping chamber required 0 additional fuel input. The earth tube ventilation, thermal mass walls, and multi-layer roof insulation maintained interior temperatures between 56 and 59 degrees Fahrenheit without any supplemental heating. Comparable data from neighbors demonstrated the dramatic efficiency differences between Hansen's approach and standard frontier methods. Tom Evans, whose above-ground bedroom adjoined a conventional frame cabin, burned through 4 1/2 cords of wood during the same period while struggling to maintain interior temperatures above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Mary Evans reported that her family's fuel costs reached $12 for the winter compared to Hansen's expenditure of $6.50, representing a savings of nearly 50%. The integration between Hansen's 4 major systems, earth berming, thermal mass walls, earth tube ventilation, and multi-layer roof insulation created performance synergies that exceeded the sum of individual components. The earth berming stabilized ground temperatures around the sea. Thermal mass walls, which stored heat delivered by air, warmed through the underground tube system, while the roof insulation prevented this stored energy from escaping upward. Each system reinforced the others in ways that Hansen had not fully anticipated during the original design phase. However, the complete system also revealed optimization challenges that required ongoing refinements throughout the first year of operation. The earth tube delivered air at slightly different temperatures depending on seasonal ground moisture conditions, requiring Hansen to develop adjustable damper positions that varied month by month. During wet spring periods, incoming air carried higher humidity that needed controlled release to prevent condensation on the thermal mass walls. Hansen addressed the moisture management issue by installing a simple condensation collection system within the earth tube. He positioned a series of shallow clay bowls at the lowest points along the tube's path, where excess moisture naturally collected during humid weather. This innovation prevented water accumulation that could block airflow while providing collected water for household use during dry summer months. The thermal mass walls also required seasonal adjustment techniques that Hansen discovered through systematic observation and experimentation. During summer months, the massive stone walls absorbed excess heat during the day and released it at night, but the timing of this heat exchange needed fine-tuning to maximize comfort. Hansen found that partially opening the connecting passage to his main dugout during late afternoon hours allowed hot air to vent out while preserving the cooling effect of the thermal mass. Economic validation extended beyond simple fuel savings to include broader household efficiency improvements that affected the family's overall homesteading success. The stable, comfortable sleeping environment improved the family's health and energy levels, allowing more productive work during critical farming seasons. Hansen's children missed fewer school days due to cold-related illnesses, and the family required less expensive medical treatment during their second year in the underground chamber. Food storage benefits provided additional economic advantages that conventional construction could not achieve. The stable temperature environment in the sleeping chamber allowed Hansen to install root storage bins along the north wall, where potatoes, turnips, and preserved meats remained fresh throughout winter without freezing or spoilage. This eliminated the need for a separate root cellar, while reducing food waste that typically plagued frontier families during temperature extremes. Hansen's detailed record-keeping revealed specific performance metrics that attracted attention from territorial agricultural authorities investigating innovative homesteading techniques. The sleeping chamber maintained temperatures within a 6-degree Fahrenheit range throughout an entire year, compared to temperature swings exceeding 60 degrees in conventional above-ground bedrooms. Humidity levels remained between 45 and 55% year-round, creating optimal conditions for human health and stored food preservation. Mary Evans became the first neighbor to implement a modified version of Hansen's techniques during the summer of 1891. She lacked Hansen's construction skills and immigrant knowledge base, so she simplified the design by excavating only 4 feet deep and using a shorter earth tube. Her results, while not matching Hansen's performance, still achieved substantial improvements over conventional construction. 30% fuel savings and interior temperature swings reduced from 50 degrees to 20 degrees. Evans encountered specific challenges that demonstrated the importance of Hansen's precise construction techniques. Her shallower excavation failed to reach stable ground temperatures, creating more temperature variation than Hansen's 7-foot depth. The shorter earth tube provided less air temperature moderation, requiring her to adjust damper settings more frequently to maintain air quality. Despite these limitations, her family reported significantly improved sleep comfort and reduced heating costs compared to their previous above-ground bedroom. The success of Evans's modified system attracted increased interest from other homesteaders who had initially dismissed Hansen's approach as too complex and time-consuming. 3 additional families began excavation projects during late summer, though each adapted the basic principles to their specific sites, skills, and resources. This pattern of simplified adoption validated Hansen's core insight about earth-integrated construction, while demonstrating that the techniques could be scaled to different implementation levels. County Agent Burr made a final official visit in September, accompanied by a territorial building inspector who had been monitoring reports of underground construction spreading throughout the district. Both officials acknowledged the documented performance advantages and cost savings, but maintained their position that such techniques remained beyond the capabilities of typical homesteading families. They recommended that the territorial government study the methods for possible inclusion in future homesteading guidance materials, but advised against immediate widespread promotion. Hansen's system entered its second winter with proven performance data and growing community recognition. The integration of indigenous Earth Lodge principles, European immigrant building traditions, and frontier carpentry skills had created a construction approach that fundamentally challenged conventional homesteading wisdom. Word of the underground sleeping chamber's success had spread beyond the immediate neighborhood, reaching territorial newspapers and agricultural extension services that documented innovative frontier techniques. The economic and performance advantages had been quantified through careful measurement and comparison, providing concrete evidence that alternative building approaches could deliver superior results for families willing to invest additional time and effort in construction. Hansen's willingness to combine traditional knowledge from multiple sources with systematic experimentation had validated the potential for significant improvements in frontier living conditions through thoughtful application of proven principles adapted to local conditions.